Martin, can you give us a little bit of your background?
Sure. I'm Marty Hatt is my name. I'm the head of a patient safety coalition in Chicago. So my field is patient safety. It's trying to make the healthcare system safer, higher quality, help our customers and clients hit new levels of excellence in terms of customer service and customer outcomes. And I'm talking this afternoon, Bernie. I'm prepared for this afternoon. I'm really not even sure what this panel is about. But I'm finding it interesting so far sitting here.
Well, I'm not sure either. So
okay.
You're not missing any information, any secret details anybody else has. So that's okay.
Maybe I can jump in unless we
Sure.
I think the context of this discussion with Martin's situation is he's been working for quite a few months on applying sentiment analysis to social media. To how one of the big discussion was, what does the client think about you? I mean, all the information out there right now, what does the client think about you? And I think he has a very interesting perspective how it can be done. Even the funny thing was, we think about social media being just a very broad-based discussion, about what am I going to eat, right? But his perception is quite different in that this is actually applying to medical and to patient safety, which is a very tangible and item out there. So I thought it was fantastic time to pick his brain. How the heck do you come up with that kind of idea? Yeah. How do you do that? So that was the reason why I thought Martin would be very helpful in this discussion here. And I thought some of our groups, immediate retail, correct? Retail would be interesting, something like that, whereas think about my T-shirt or my shoes, whatever. So I thought, well, that would be interesting.
So I have a question for Marty then. Bearing in mind that social media by itself is probably an anonymous activity, and I'm as guilty as anyone of this. We'll shoot from the hip and we'll just say whatever is on our mind in 140 characters or less.
Yep. I'm trying to stop that, by the way.
How does a sentiment analysis kind of take the inherent negativity that we have in an anonymous situation and kind of even out the playing field and say it's really not as bad as you think it is, it's X, not Y?
Well, first of all, the project we're working on is a prototype project. I'll show you some pieces of it this afternoon when I talk. But when I went to our first client to say, would you be interested in helping us develop this prototype, it was just earlier this year. And I did a profile of that hospital, the Chicago Suburban Hospital, on Yelp, just to see the comments that had gotten in. There were 5 comments. 2 were very positive, 1 was pretty neutral, and 2 were extremely negative. I went into my client, which is a hospital that is known for excellence. It's a Baldrige winner. One of 12 hospitals in the entire country that's won the Baldrige Award for excellence, and they said, what is Yelp? So really we were starting at square one with them, and they just really had no idea that those comments were out there. So certainly one of the things that we've helped to do, and things move very, very quickly. So I think that if I asked that question now, I wouldn't get the same answer, even though that was just January and it's now only just August. But we're looking at helping them, get on top and getting in front of the pack of hospitals in Chicago. There are 90 hospitals in Chicago. All competing for business in one way or another, to say, this is a reputation management tool for you. We know from the data on safety that if you have a dissatisfied customer and you get to them early, the big fear, of course, is a lawsuit in our field. But you can turn people around if you can talk to them early. So if we can help our customers figure out how to, where their dissatisfied people are, there's an opportunity there for them to avoid lawsuits and maybe learn something that can help them improve the way they're perceived.
Do you do things as well around actually coaching them to try to get happy customers to go and write reviews? Do you do anything to try to help make their reviews more positive?
I personally don't. There's a huge consulting business around that that we're not a part of. But I think for the typical hospital now, it's data overload. I mean, they have all of these consultants in all of these different ways in which they're getting feedback from customers. There's patient satisfaction surveys. People sometimes write complaint letters. They sometimes write compliment letters. There's actually a lot of compliments that hospitals get, too. It's not all negative. In fact, I think it's probably pretty 50-50 in terms of the narrative feedback they get. There's, of course, litigation and claims, the claim letter. So there's all those different ways to get feedback. Plus, a lot of hospitals are doing phone surveys of their recently discharged customers. Some of them are walking around. They have rounds where they actually just talk to customers, patients, and families about how satisfied they are. But integrating that into a database that you could actually do something with, I think there's maybe a handful of hospitals that are doing that well.
Plenty of data, but not a lot of information.
It reminds me of, I went to Key West at the beginning of the summer with my wife for our 10th wedding anniversary, and the Beach Boys who were doing the chairs and the umbrellas, the first thing that they said was TripAdvisor is our big brother. And a lot of, as in terms of resort areas, their customer service has increased dramatically because of the feedback that they're getting on TripAdvisor. And they're very, very sensitive. Their bosses are looking at TripAdvisor. They're trying to create a brand advocates in the community to create a bigger value proposition for that specific resort. And these guys were so much on their toes the whole time because they feared your comments on TripAdvisor. and that's the truth. And that's how, another example is P90X. Who's heard of P90X, the exercise company? I've never heard of them until I saw them all over social. My family in California, they're talking about how they lost X amount of pounds doing P90X. I probably haven't even seen one infomercial or short or long form commercial on it because P90X has brand advocates about their organization organically creating value for them through social media. So what you're seeing is this transparency of people in the community creating positive outcomes for consumer-based products. Now we, as who's developers in here, or who's administrators here, who are engineers here, we're not marketers. Right. So everybody realize that right now. So I'm not a marketer by trade. So what we did at the ROG team was we hired a social media strategist, right? Who is not IBM, who is not Lotus, who has a very agnostic view of the world, has done analytics around the outside of what people and organizations are looking for, and we adopted their strategies, right? And his or her strategies. And for MWLUG people, and for what Russ is talking about, how do we adopt social for mid or small market organizations, is to don't think about it for yourself. Find the person in your organization or outside your organization, engage with them, and have a meaningful conversation with them about it first. Doesn't make sense for you to spend an enormous amount of business time on this because you're getting paid to be engineers. Is that correct? I mean, most of us in this room are engineers of some sort, developers or admins. Your job isn't to market your organization.
Right.
It isn't. That's the God's honest truth. You're not going to walk out of here and have 15 million followers after talking about social for 1 week at MWLUG. So.
If I can kind of build on that, the genesis for the idea for the product that we're developing came from a person who I'm on board with, who lost his father to infection in a very, very prominent LA hospital, one of the best hospitals in the country, quote unquote. And this guy my colleague owns the Game Show Network, and is very, very attuned to what people think of his game shows every night. He tells me that he spends every morning from time to get to the office until late morning and early, right around noon, just looking at social media to see what comments people are making about his game shows, and it figures right into what programming they do. And he was shocked to hear that there was just such disconnect between the hospital management and the hospital system and any kind of sense of what their customers think about the care there. And so I kind of learned from him. I mean, I let me follow you around. That's right. And he introduced me to a couple people in the movie industry who said, social media, 200 negative comments can kill a movie. So we look, and if we get to 200, we look read them and we change the ending. I mean, it's kind of changed the whole way in which movies are previewed now. I mean, when I first started looking at the sentiment analysis, I Googled it in January or maybe November of last year, and there were a handful of things. Once for the New York Times, first one was 2009. Suddenly it's all over the place. So people are just looking at this emotional content of the responses they're getting on social media and trying to figure out how to analyze them and figure them into their quality improvement.
Do we have any other questions? Do we have any questions for anybody besides Darren? Go ahead.
I think you mentioned your topic this afternoon. I'll be there to attend and listen in.
but the sentiment analysis, right? When you go to any online shop and trying to understand the reviews that are there, sometimes you say this is somebody is inside the company doing it, so how do you really, also gauge in terms of, how valid this review is? And that part of the sentiment analysis does that?
It's part of what we're doing right now. I mean, we're at a stage in development of this product that I'll do an introduction to, where we're just kind of kicking the tires and figuring out how valuable it is versus other sources of information about how satisfied your customers are. Are we getting something additional that's worth selling? I think we are, but that's what we're in phase 2 of just kind of kicking the tires on that right now.
It's very valuable.
Yeah. Well, and I know from the IBM perspective, there are actually some really good tools in the Cognos brand, which there is sort of I know they're trying to break down the walls between the brands, but in terms of as partners selling the products, there's a huge learning curve, certifications, but there are a lot of tools in the Cognos brand for listening, for doing some of the sentiment analysis. So IBM has some offerings. This is why, by the way, because I was mystified by this. I'm like, why do they keep talking about Cognos? This is Lotusphere. But that's exactly why they're doing it, is really completeness of solution. Because again, if you look at some of the competing tools that are out there, they have what Connections has, and they also have the listening piece. So from an IBM perspective, to compete, you have to bring in some of those Cognos solutions as well. So, and if I can get in one quick plug, I'm actually going to be interviewing somebody from Cognos probably in September for my podcast, which is getsocialdobusiness.com. So be looking for that one, and I'm going to ask him exactly these questions, like what are these tools exactly, which ones do we need, how do they all work with the Lotus stack. So do we have other questions? All right, Darren, I'll let you ask yours.
so part of this is social business, is it evolutionary or evolutionary? And just each panel member to say which do they think it is and why. And I don't think there's a right answer, but what is it? Is it an evolution? Is it a revolution? Is it a side-evolution? Is it something completely different?
For healthcare, it's going to be transformative because right now, healthcare, the quality improvement is done by the system for their customers. They don't engage their customers in quality improvement very well. So, and customers are finding more and more ways to figure out where they want to go for their healthcare and how to make better decisions. So it's going to completely transform the way in which healthcare systems, which are now so focused on their medical stats, their bottom line, they don't. I mean, healthcare is usually purchased for you as if you're a consumer through an intermediary of some sort. Your employer purchases it for you, or you don't really make the decisions yourself usually. And so now people are making those decisions because they just have ways to kind of check out the institution before they go there. So there's a huge push in the industry for public reporting of information that patients can use to make decisions about infection rates and other kinds of error rates that is new within the last 3 or 4 years. It's still hard to use. It's not user-friendly yet, but it's going to be transformative.
So Carlos, more from a Lotus perspective, is this revolution, evolution?
Right. So for me, it's all rhetoric until you bring a client to the table, right? I always say that. So we have 2 customers. One's a very large healthcare client in Dover, Delaware that has 3,500 seats in Dutch Domino. CIO is kind of the Charlton Heston of Lotus. You'll pry it from my cold dead hands.
I like this guy.
However, culturally speaking, the organization is very linear. It's very inbox centric. I've had lots of discussions with him. He watches. He's following me. Follows me on Twitter on the social networks. He constantly asks me questions. He's very busy. They have EMR solutions, and they acquire a lot of home health, a lot of private practices under the brand. So it really depends because I think in a large enterprise, IBM INA accounts, LE accounts, it's going to be revolutionary. Social technology or extending collaboration amongst other silos. In the small medium business world, less than 1,000, less than 500, less than 200 seats, it's probably, it's going to be a slow-moving ship. Culturally, though, communication in 2011 is still linear, in my opinion. It's still very linear. Instant messaging is linear until you bring other people into the instant messaging conversation. So it's not even truly transparent. So, but I have another client, who is also evaluating